Africans, my encouragement to us is that we continue to be involved in what God is doing around the world and even in our continent. Let us arise. In the comment section, would you kindly tell us the name that you give to the living and the true God in your African mother tongue? That will some history, and I'll be reading most of this. And we really appreciate so much, eternally grateful to the Western missionaries for the work they have done in Africa. Some of them came when it was very dangerous, and some of them used to come and they did not used to go back to their countries. Others came with their coffins because they knew they are coming to die as they seek to reach the lost in Africa. We are grateful. There is a lot of work of Bible translation in many African languages that the West have done in Africa, and we thank you for that. Now, we also need to appreciate that Africans have done a lot for Christianity to be where it is today in Africa. We have been involved, and I want to just give us the history of some men and women who have been there and some mission movements. We will start with George Liele, 1750 to 1820.
I want people to know that we had an African American who went into international ministries before international missions was popular.
He was a freed African American slave who sailed to Jamaica to preach and to do church planting. And this was 30 years before the Judsons left New England in 1812. So really, George Liele deserves the title America's first Protestant missionary and not the Judsons. He also sailed to Jamaica 10 years before William Carey left England, and that makes him to deserve the title the father of modern missions. Of course, this is not to say that William Carey did not do a lot. He was a pace-setter in many respects. For example, creating and organizing a formal missions sending agency. So as we look into the pioneers of modern Protestant missions, history tells us that George Liele was the first one in 1782. He was an African American from the USA. Then William Carey in 1792, a British, and then Adoniram Judson in 1812 from the USA. Now, 7 years when this gentleman was in Jamaica, he had led 500 slaves to Christ. And by 1840, there were 8,000 Baptist converts there. He was a significant influence in the abolition of slave trade, which happened later in 1830 in Jamaica.
The importance of the legacy is you don't necessarily have to be the first. There are others who have gone before you, and they have been used greatly of the Lord. George Liele, an African American born in slavery, but became one of the great preachers and missionaries from our country. He's gone before you, and he's a great example.
Then we have Samuel Ajayi Crowther, 1809 to 1891. He had been caught as a slave by the Fulani people, but he escaped and went to the Gold Coast as a missionary. And he was the first African Anglican bishop. And he did a lot of work in West Africa. We also have Mwangi wa Nyarari from Kenya, who walked about 241 kilometers to pioneer gospel, the work of the gospel among a different people group in the year 1928. We have Ramatoa Razarinia, who was a Malagasy woman who founded schools and reached pupils in Madagascar with the gospel of Christ. She was sent as a missionary to the southeast coast in Madagascar in the year 1890. We have Apollo Kivebulaya, 1864 to 1933. He was a Ugandan Christian sent by Church Missionary Society as an evangelist and as an Anglican priest. He played a central role in the local acceptance and adaptation of Christianity by the people of East Africa. He established many small churches in Western Uganda and East Congo and inspired many local church leadership. We can talk about John Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark. We know that he evangelized Alexandria in Egypt. The Hebrew Bible was translated to Greek, which is called the Septuagint, in Alexandria, Egypt, in a library there in BC 130. And that became the Old Testament text in the Christian church. We have Tertullian from Tunisia, who coined the term Trinity and also gave us the Old and New Testament designations of the Bible. We have Origen. Origen is the greatest, has been called the greatest scholar and theologian of the Eastern Church. And he was born in Alexandria, Egypt. And he wrote about 6,000 books. We have Augustine of Hippo. Augustine of Hippo, even though he schooled and lived in the West, he was born in Thagaste, Algeria. And he was a great theologian and philosopher. We can talk about Karaupen, who worked among the Tangale people of Nigeria. We can talk about Reverend Baba, who served for 70 years, doing a lot of pioneering mission work and raising missionaries. We have Dr. Bagunjoko. We have William de Graft and Joseph Smith, who are mulattoes, or what we call African Europeans. In Ghana, they did a lot of good work. We have Jacobus Elisa Johannes Captain, also an African European, who was sent by the Moravians and did a great work where he was sent. Then we have William Wade Harris, who was a Liberian evangelist. He preached in Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana. Of course, we have Athanasius of Alexandria, Egypt, and also Anthony of Egypt. Some mission organizations that have been doing a lot of mission work, trying to discover and reach people groups and also reaching them. We have, for example, the Global Conference of World Evangelization, GCOWE. The Lucerne Congress on World Evangelization is usually attended by many African delegates. We have the Association of Evangelicals in Africa, AEA. We have Africans to Africa, A2A. We have Mission Campaign Network here in our country. We have the Movement for African National Initiatives, MANI, which was birthed in 2000 by African leaders in Jerusalem. And the work of this MANI is to see that Africa plays an integral role in God's global mission. And many others that we have today who are doing a great work to mobilize Africans and to be involved in the Great Commission. So these names, I know history is sometimes boring, but history gives us a good perspective that we have been involved and we can be involved now and in the days to come. Let us not despise ourselves. The Lord bless you. See you next time.